Hello, Friars. Yeah, so I want to do two videos today. The first one, which will be this one, is about the Permafrost sale and what we learned there, and then the second one will be about the concept of live actors. Yeah, and I'll just touch on the message, that message that went out the day before yesterday from Logan on our Telegram group. Yeah, so basically on the Permafrost sale. So for those of you who don't know, the Permafrost sale was an experiment where we wanted to see what would happen if we sold Fry for Ether Fry liquidity. This went down, actually, like in my view, it was quite a success. I would say some of the hoped for goals, that it would have like a very rapid positive feedback loop. Those things didn't necessarily happen, but we got a lot of very positive stuff out of it. So we raised about $3,500 worth of permanently locked liquidity in the balancer pool for Fry. So if you, at any point in the future now, as long as Ethereum is running, head on over to that balancer pool. You can trade wrapped Ether or Ether to Fry tokens, basically, like, and that will pretty much be available forever. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, so I was actually quite surprised that given the suppression in price at the moment, that we actually like had that level of interest in it. Now, one of the other things that we learned from marketing this basically was that we actually now have a fairly good grasp on the results of pay for marketing in Twitter specifically. Right, so we now basically know that we can market our website safely on Twitter, yeah, without it seemingly triggering, you know, like adverse responses from them as one might have expected. That's what we were expecting, you know, for paid for crypto Twitter ads. But yeah, so that seems to be working very well, and it seems to be net positive. So in other words, for every dollar that we spend, we're getting in more than $2. Right, so we suspect there might be a diminishing rate of return on this, but I fully expect that one of our next big orders of business will be to push that to the maximum, to basically say that, listen, you know, we're going to keep pushing it until it maybe reaches like a 50% return on investment. So every dollar spent comes back with $1.5 or something to that effect. Right, and that's extremely positive. I mean, that's really cool. So the number of Fry holders and the number of participants in the sale at the moment can then definitely go up. So I'm super psyched about that. That's very cool. Yeah, the other thing is that, you know, like I say, we gathered about $3.5 thousand worth of permanently locked liquidity. And yeah, I suspect that if we had something like a permanently running permafrost sale going, we might actually have accumulated by this point on the order of about $52,000 worth of permanently locked liquidity. Now that would have actually been super healthy for the project, just purely from the perspective of, you know, it allows people to climb in with minimal slippage, and it allows people to climb out with minimal slippage. Yeah, and of course it just makes everyone far more comfortable that there aren't going to be rug pulls and there aren't going to be those kinds of things. The other thing as well is, like, a lot of the friars we now have sort of climbed on board when there was a specific tweet that went out that gathered us a lot of interest from a whole bunch of people. You know, and I think unfortunately lots of those people are still waiting to see some sort of a positive return on things. And one of the things that this permafrost sale has convinced me of is if we had a much larger pool of liquidity, and especially if it was permanently locked, you know, I think first of all that absolute over spike that we saw all the way up to 20 cents would probably have been dampened significantly. So in other words, we might have only really seen it spike up to maybe 5 cents, and it would have taken a much longer time for the inflation dynamics to actually push it back down again. And also, due to that massive over amount of interest, there's also a very real chance that we would have gathered way more than what I calculate now to be about $50,000 worth of liquidity. We would have probably gathered a lot more than that in a you know, in a very short period of time. So yeah, so those are basically the conclusions that I have for the permafrost sale. I have some more on forum.foundrydao.com. You can go check them out there. So yeah, so another thing that I just want to mention is that yeah, so this morning, me and the well, yeah, so sort of like the current strategic team, for lack of better phrasing, had a little bit of a meeting as well, and yeah, and we basically discussed how we can combine yield farming with something like a permafrost sale in the future. But I'll make a separate video about that. And then generally the idea is there that we can actually then attract a lot of liquidity, really like buffer the price movement in a very healthy kind of a way, and actually grow the treasury and the open level, I can say the open amount of active live participants by a significant degree.